One of the top Steelers insiders from The Athletic, Mike DeFabo, just dropped a major update surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers' off-season plans this year. He dropped a big article today with the latest of what he's been hearing from the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. And on today's show, we're going to be covering a bunch of different topics that DeFabo gives updates on, including the veteran that the Steelers cut last week. Also, Aaron Rodgers, the latest on him. Apparently, teams have been calling about a potential Pat Freiermuth trade and whether or not Jonnu Smith is going to get cut this offseason. Could Pittsburgh be keeping and even extending Nick Herbig this offseason while also keeping TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith? That seems to be a growing possibility at this hour. And then also, Pittsburgh's playing at cornerback. What is the team planning on doing at that position? We're going to answer all those questions and more on today's show. Now, guys, The Athletic, they make you pay around $8 a month for this content from Mike DeFabo, but today we're giving you the same info 100% free, plus you're getting my commentary and my thoughts on what is being reported here, guys. So if you guys want free premium Steelers content here on YouTube every single day, this is the channel that you guys click that subscribe button for. There's a reason why we are the largest individually run Steelers news program anywhere here on YouTube with over 115,000 subscribers. The reason for that is we get you guys premium content and you don't have to pay a single dime out of pocket to get it. So make sure you click that subscribe button to join our family today. With that, let's get into the news, starting here with a cut that we got this weekend. Mike DeFabo reported this weekend that the Steelers are planning to release offensive tackle Calvin Anderson. Per source, they'll save $2 million of his $2.4 million cap hit in 2026. Now, to be clear, this is not Spencer Anderson. All right, we had two Andersons along the offensive line last year. Calvin has dealt with a lot of different injuries, and they signed him to a new contract last offseason. But Spencer Anderson is still on the team. Don't you worry about that. He's still, eligible to be that jumbo tight end, good depth along the offensive line. He's still on the team. It's Calvin Anderson that is the one getting cut here. But I would expect Pittsburgh to probably bring in some sort of offensive tackle depth this offseason, whether that's a draft pick, whether that's a free agency signing. I mean, Broderick Jones, we really don't know what his status is going to be going into next year. It sounds like at this point, the chances of him even being ready to start camp might be a little bit questionable, but you got Dylan Cook, who played really well for you at left tackle last year for the most part. And then Troy Fautanu, of course, your first-round pick from a couple years ago, is going to be your starting right tackle. But now that Anderson is out of the picture, I would assume, especially with Broderick's injury, that they're going to bring in some more veteran depth at the offensive tackle position, or maybe some rookie depth as well. Then we shift our focus here to the quarterback position, where DeFabo says that the Steelers, quote-unquote, think Aaron Rodgers will be returning to the team this season, and they are willing to wait a couple more weeks to wait for a decision from the four-time NFL MVP. This is what Mike has to say about the latest around Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers had positive exit meetings with the Steelers in January. In the weeks since, people on all levels of the organizations, players, coaches, and top decision-makers have maintained consistent communication with the quarterback. The best way to describe the Steelers' feelings, they think Rodgers is going to return for 2026, but until he gives them a definitive answer, they can't speak in certain terms. So, especially with the update there of the constant communication between players, coaches, and team personnel. Apparently Rodgers is being very positive with those communications between him and the team. It just does seem like Rodgers really enjoyed his time here in Pittsburgh. And, according to, I think it was Tom Pelissero, he said that his body was feeling really well at the end of the season this past year. I'm fairly confident at this point that Aaron Rodgers will be our starting quarterback in 2026. And it wouldn't shock me if we get an answer as soon as this week, but obviously with NFL free agency coming up next week, the sooner the better when it comes to an Aaron Rodgers decision. But I do think we'll get it soon, and I do think that decision will be to return to the team in 2026 as the Pittsburgh Steelers' starting quarterback. So where are you guys at? What is the percent chance that Aaron Rodgers is back with the team this season? Put it on a scale of 0, meaning no chance he comes back, he's retiring, to 100%, meaning he's definitely coming back. It's just a matter of time. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. So in just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at GLD. While I tell you about our sponsor today, let me know what you guys think about today's pinned question with a number between 0 and 100. And with that, let's have a word from our sponsor today at GLD. And let's think about this thing for a second, guys, okay? Every guy has their go-to pieces in their closet, right? Whether it's shoes that go with everything, that one pair of jeans that just fit right, the t-shirt that always looks clean no matter what you pair it with. You don't overthink those pieces. You just grab them and they work every time. But most guys are missing one one thing from their lineup, and that's jewelry. That's exactly where GLD comes in. They make the kind of pieces that become part of your routine. Not just something you save for special occasions or just once in a while. Just clean, quality pieces that instantly make your fit look more fresh. Once you add a GLD chain to your collection, you will never go back. And this isn't the cheap stuff, guys. GLD only uses real gold, and every stone is meticulously hand set, and their production process is on a completely different level. You can see it and you can feel it, and you guys can actually see my piece here from GLD. It's a Steelers pendant that absolutely shines. I don't know if you guys can see it on camera here, but when I'm walking around the office, everyone's complimenting me on my GLD pendant, and I love wearing this thing on game days to show my pride for the black and gold. And guys, this is one of those pieces that you put on once. This isn't one of those pieces that you put on once and then it just never, comes off. They've got everything too, from chains, pendants, bracelets, and even a nice selection of watches if that's your style. Whether you keep it simple or you like a little shine, they've got you covered. And it's not just hype, guys. They have over 2 million customers and 50,000 five-star reviews, with GLD being worn by names like Justin Bieber, Malik Neighbors, Micah Parsons, A$AP Rocky, and plenty more. But the best part is every single piece is guaranteed for life when it comes to GLD. If you want to look, feel, and be your best, or just want to level up any outfit, this is the missing piece you've been sleeping on. Work hard and change the game with GLD today. For a limited time only, new customers are getting an insane deal. Use code CHAT to get 50% off at GLD.com. That's 50% off with code CHAT at GLD.com. After you purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. And a big shout out to GLD for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. Now, could we see some movement at the tight end position this offseason, namely a Pat Freiermuth trade? Well, Mike DeFabo says that there are multiple teams, and actually a half dozen NFL teams, are interested in a Pat Freiermuth trade this offseason, but apparently Pittsburgh is not biting on that cheese. DeFabo says at least 6 teams would be interested in exploring the idea of acquiring tight end Pat Freiermuth, according to a league source. However, at least right now, teams are being told he's not available. Now, guys, for me, this is great news. All right, not only does this confirm that Pat Freiermuth most likely will be on the Steelers roster next year and he will not be getting traded, but it also means that if they're not willing to trade him, that they have a plan for him heading into next season. I've said since the day Mike McCarthy was hired as the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers that his offense and the amount of times he likes to use choice routes in the slot, especially with really good slot receivers and good tight ends, Pat Freiermuth, I think, can really thrive in this offense, just like Dalton Schultz did there with the Cowboys for many years. With Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy in Dallas, I think that Pat is going to be a real weapon here in Pittsburgh, especially if Rodgers returns. We saw that chemistry between Rodgers and Pat really flourish at the end of this past season, and I think if you get Pat on the field more often, which I think is the plan here in Pittsburgh for 2026, I think a lot of good things are going to come out of that. Now, Mike DeFabo also says in his article that Jonnu Smith's situation is quote-unquote more fluid, so that certainly indicates to me that he could be cut or traded at some point this offseason. It's also a possibility that he could be kept on the roster if they can afford it, because I think Omar Khan does like Jonnu Smith. But in my opinion, guys, Jonnu should 100% be traded or cut. All right, if you can't find a trade for him by NFL free agency, cut him. You save $7 million against the cap that can be used for other things that are more productive to the success of this football team than keeping Jonnu Smith, who is probably going to be expecting a lot of playing time and all this different stuff, and that he frankly just doesn't deserve at this point in his career. And inside this tight end room, Darnell Washington and Pat Freiermuth should be getting pretty much every single tight end snap that there is to be had in this offense. And Jonnu, you guys have heard me say it before, he can't block, he can't really run routes, he doesn't have great hands, and he's not terrific after the catch like he was in Miami. I don't know what happened to Jonnu Smith last year. It just wasn't very good here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But now let's talk about maybe the most interesting section of this article here from Mike DeFabo, where he says the Pittsburgh Steelers would like to keep Nick Herbig for not only this season, but they might even want to extend him if the price is right, and keep TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig under contract, even though all three would at that point be making big-time starter-level money in the Steelers' defense. This is what Mike had to say about this situation. The sense around the league is he's being honest here. A league source believes the Steelers would like to extend Herbig, but also keep Highsmith. The question is whether Herbig Herbig would want to sign right now to get the security, or if he'd be willing to bet on himself, let this season play out, and then hit the open market in 2027. The price tag and contract terms will determine if the Steelers get the extension done with Herbig. Now, looking at Spotrac's market value on Herbig, right now they set it at just 4 years, $14 million per season. If that's the price tag to lock down Nick Herbig for the foreseeable future, I am signing that today, but unfortunately Spotrac is probably vastly undervaluing Nick Herbig, who led the league in pass rush win rate last year. He's been awesome for this football team as a rotational pass rusher the last 2 years, and as we know, TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith haven't always been available for this team. When he's had to step in as a starter, he hasn't slowed down. He has been an awesome football player, and he definitely deserves to be a full-time starting edge rusher in this league. Now, Omar did say at the NFL Combine last week that Pittsburgh has the cap situation to do things a bit differently. Here's the Steelers GM breaking that all down.
You can't ever have enough good players at a specific position. With respect to the monetary part of your question, I'd say we're in a good cap position, so we have flexibility to do different things. And obviously, we haven't been in a position where we're paying the quarterback position at the top level. So we've had flexibility to where maybe you can go heavy at a specific position.
So obviously Omar thinks that the team can do things maybe a little bit unconventionally this offseason, but this is what he had to say about Nick Herbig in a different interview during the NFL Combine. Nick wants to play more, and I think we'd all like to have Nick on the field more, but he's obviously someone that we'd like to have around for a long time. This defense has been based on those outside pass rushers for a long time, so you can never have enough of them. So with this kind of idea of the Steelers, not only maintaining Nick Herbig for another season, but potentially extending him along with TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, who are both under contract for multiple years at this point and to pretty high dollar figures. Could Pittsburgh move to a three-way starting outside linebacker rotation where Watt, Highsmith, and Herbig are all getting a similar amount of snaps over the course of every single NFL game where they're all playing in that game? You guys can see last year when all four of the edge rushers for the Steelers were healthy, okay? That was 9 games throughout the course of the 2025 campaign. All right, in those games, TJ Watt averaged 57 snaps in those games. Okay, Alex Highsmith averaged 51. Nick Herbig had about 20 less snaps than his counterparts there, even though he was just as efficient as Highsmith and Watt. And then, of course, Jack Sawyer, dove into that a little bit with 11 snaps per game in those games where everybody was healthy and available. So something you guys need to know, guys, that last year Pittsburgh averaged about 65 defensive snaps a game last year, which, of course, if you double that, that means 130 snaps combined for the entire outside linebacking group, assuming that you only have 2 outside linebackers on the field at one time. Now, I would expect with the Steelers offense hopefully getting better that the defense doesn't have to be on the field as much. So maybe that number gets down to 60 defensive snaps a game or something like that, and you have less outside linebacker snaps to share. But let's just take that number, 130 outside linebacker snaps a game. Okay, and let's account for Sawyer's 10 snaps a game or whatever you want to give him, right? That would get you down to 120 outside linebacker snaps that you'd have to distribute evenly between TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig. And obviously, to make that work, you're going to have to give all 3 of those guys 40 snaps a game. Now, it's not going to be exact, right? Because, there's going to be game situations where you want your top 2 guys in there. And, there's going to be certain situations where it's not going to be 40 snaps a game every single game for all of these guys. But you can do your best with substitutions and all that different stuff and trying to keep these guys fresh throughout the course of a game and throughout the season to try and get these guys to that 40 snap a game number. That can be the goal heading into next year. And on paper, this could keep everyone happy. 40 snaps is not a full-time starter's workload. It's certainly not the workload that Watt and Highsmith are used to, which is, over 50 snaps a game. But maybe they would like, having less of a workload during the regular season so that they can stay fresher throughout the course of the year. They can make the most and be more efficient when they're out there on the field, and they can stay fresh when and if the Pittsburgh Steelers end up making the NFL postseason. Not to mention, if there's injuries, you can always just go to, the other 2 guys, and they can be your full-time starters. You can give them a higher workload where the other guy is working back from injury. I do think that this is something that could work if all 3 of these men are willing to make it work. Now, you might be saying at home, but Jack, if you give Nick Herbig an extension and you keep all 3 of these guys, there's going to be so much money money put into this room, and you'd be right about that. Right now, the Pittsburgh Steelers are slated to pay T.J. Watt $42 million against the cap this year. That is quarterback level money, ladies and gentlemen. And then you got Alex Highsmith, who also has a $20 million cap hit. If you pay Nick Herbig somewhere upwards of $20 million per season, who knows how high that cap hit could get. You could distribute it and kind of backload it if you wanted to, but it's going to be an expensive room if you end up extending Herbig and you don't trade anybody this offseason. And you could maneuver the cap. You could, restructure TJ Watt's contract. You could backload Nick Herbig's contract so that, the cap hit isn't that high in this room for the 2026 season. But I was kind of thinking about this situation today, guys, and it kind of, an epiphany kind of just came up in my brain here today. And I was like, wait a second. You could extend Nick Herbig for this offseason, okay? And, you could bring him in and lock him up for the next 4 years probably. You can keep all three of these guys in the room this season, and you can manipulate the cap to lower the cap hit if you need to. But then, once we get to 2027, you could trade Alex Highsmith when he's about to turn 30, and he's on the final year of his contract, and you can get a pretty decent draft pick in exchange for him next offseason. I think that is something that would be probably the best path forward here, because not only do you get to keep TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig in your building for another year and have that three-headed monster, but also you can get some value out of Highsmith on the trade market next offseason. And yeah, you don't have to let go of Nick Herbig this offseason, and you can have TJ Watt on the team as well, retire a Steeler whenever it's time for him to hang up the cleats. And, you guys can take a look here. If the Steelers trade Alex Highsmith in 2027, it's a very manageable thing. You save $15.5 million against the cap for 2027, and you only take on about $5.5 million in dead cap. That's really not that much in dead cap. And, you go into that 2027 season where you still got TJ Watt, who the team, has said time and time again, we want him to retire a Steeler. And now we've got Nick Herbig locked up for the future, hopefully at a pretty decent price tag, and you still got that dynamic duo at the outside linebacker position for the future. And you still got Jack Sawyer in the room, who would be ready to take on that number 3 rotational role. If you wanted to bring in more of a true pass rusher in the rotation spot, you could bring in somebody in the draft or in free agency for a lower price tag. And I just think that it's going to be a little bit weird this season, because I do think they want to keep Nick Herbig and TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. They don't want to let go of any of these guys because they're all really good players. And if you can find a way to keep all these guys in your outside linebacker room this year, it makes sense to do that. So I think that's what they're going to do this year, and then they trade Alex Highsmith in 2027. And I think that is the best plan moving forward for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. Should the Pittsburgh Steelers extend Nick Herbig this offseason and pay an astronomical amount of money for their outside linebacker room? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section. Then we do have one more topic to discuss on today's show, which is the cornerback room. And DeFabo says that he expects the Pittsburgh Steelers to re-sign a cornerback, either James Pierre or Asante Samuel Jr., and then to draft one pretty early in the NFL draft this year. This is what Mike DeFabo has to say on this position, specifically about James Pierre. The Steelers met with James Pierre's representatives in Indianapolis this week, and also spoke with Asante Samuel Jr.'s camp. A 2 or 3 year contract above the veteran minimum, but nothing exorbitant, would likely be enough to re-sign James Pierre. When it comes to Asante Samuel Jr., he says the Steelers were one of only the few teams willing to medically clear the corner following spinal fusion surgery. One league source said he was shocked any team was willing to clear Samuel last year. The team should factor in the medical risk when determining what they're comfortable offering. Also, the market will likely be suppressed by the limited number of teams who would be okay with his medical. So it seems like if you can't bring back James Pierre, that you can probably bring back Asante Samuel Jr. this next season for a pretty decent price tag, I might add. But DeFabo also said when it comes to drafting a cornerback, quote, the Steelers also met with a ton of cornerbacks formally and informally and are planning to draft one this year. Now you can take a look at all of the corners that the Steelers formally met with, or at least reportedly met with formally. you can see it's a lot of early round guys. Like, all of these guys are projected to be, top 3 round picks. Most of them, in the first round conversation: Mansour Delane, Jermod McCoy, Avion Terrell, Colton Hood. And then you got a couple guys that could go round 2 or round 3. And I'm sure at some point here in these first 3 rounds, the Steelers will take somebody to be the future at the cornerback 2 spot alongside Joey Porter Jr. If you guys want to check out every single player that the Steelers met with formally at the Combine, we have all 45 of the Combine formal interviews that the Steelers performed in Indianapolis last week in a video we put out earlier today. I'll put the chip to that one in the top right and the link down there in the comments and description of today's show. But going back here to the veterans, I'm cool bringing back either James Pierre or Asante Samuel Jr. I think they're both good football players and both show that they can still play last season. However, I do think James Pierre played better than Asante Samuel Jr. did last year. So if I can bring back Pierre for a decent price tag, I'm not going to pay him too much, but if I can bring him back for a decent price tag, he would get my choice. All right, now there's certainly going to be a number, and whatever that number is for Omar in the front office is going to be what it is. And if Pierre wants more than that, I'm sure they're perfectly fine going back to Asante Samuel Jr., who's probably less expensive than Pierre, and saying, we'll just bring you back for a year and draft a rookie and have you guys kind of battle it out in camp. But I think Pierre played really well last year. I think he's a good fit for Patrick Graham's system. I think he worked well with Joey Porter Jr. and the rest of the secondary last year, and I'd love to see him back with the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2026. So take your pick for me down there in the comments section. Who would you like to see back in the black and gold next year? Type JP for James Pierre or ASJ for Asante Samuel Jr. And that'll be it for me today here on Steelers Talk, guys. I really appreciate all of your guys' support. Of course, the rumors are going to be really jacked up to 11 this week with free agency coming up next week, and trades are going to be happening and all this different stuff. And you better believe the Steelers are going to be right in the thick of that, especially with an Aaron Rodgers decision hanging over our heads here over the next week or so. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. If we get any breaking news updates, Ponzi and I will be here to provide the very latest for you guys right here on YouTube. So make sure you click that subscribe button to never miss a thing.